We're here with Jon Friedberg, and we're going to talk about a real-life tournament situation. Now, Jon, was there ever a time in a big tournament when you made a kind of outrageous call, a place where you could have been beat, and then it benefited you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think there's probably been a lot of times when I made outrageous calls. The most outrageous call that I can think of happened at the Foxwoods World Poker Tour event this past November, yeah. And it was a $10,000 buy-in tournament. I think we started with probably $20,000 in starting chips. And we were in day one. It was pretty late in day one. And I had a good-sized stack. I had probably around 60,000 in chips. And average at that point was probably only around 40,000 or so. So I had a pretty good stack. And let's see what happened. I was dealt a King-Jack of hearts, I believe it was. And I think I limped in first position for whatever the blinds were, probably around 1,000 or so in the big blind. And I think another person called, and then another person who had been playing his big hands really strong and his weak hands really weak, he also called. And then I think the small blind and big blind called. So there's probably about 5 of us to see the flop, right? I had King Jack. So the flop comes a Jack with 2 spades, okay? But two smaller spades. So something like a Jack 7 deuce or something with 2 spades. And it's check to me. I make a bet for probably about 3/4 of the pot. And this guy in later position than me made a pretty big raise. So I think there's probably around 6,000 in the pot to start the hand. I think I bet out 4,000 on the flop, and I think this guy raised to about 14 or 15,000 or maybe 16,000. It was folded to me. I make the call. The turn came another complete blank, like maybe a red 3 or something, that did not put a second flush draw on the board. So I checked to the raiser, and he's got a huge stack, by the way, which I didn't mention. He just fires all in for like 100-something thousand. He says, I'm all in.
So clearly you'd be all in if you made the call.
So I had at that point, 45,000 chips left or somewhere around there. Had a lot of chips left. I still had above average. If I folded right there, I still had a bigger than average stack. And again, it's a big tournament. We're playing for $1.5–2 million for first place. Still a lot of players left, obviously, but and I don't have that strong of a hand. I have top pair, which is only a pair of jacks. So here's what I was thinking. If he had an ace jack, he would have raised it pre-flop, right? An ace jack beats me. He's got me out kicked. If he had an ace jack, he would have raised pre-flop. Okay, if he had 2 queens, 2 kings, or 2 aces, same thing. If he had a set of 7s or 2s or 3s, I think it was Jack 7 deuce 3.
He would have probably just called you on the flop.
Right, he wouldn't, and certainly on the turn, he's not going to just push all in there because he's going to want action, right?
Yeah.
So I couldn't think of any hand that he could possibly have that beat me. But I knew that there was a flush draw out there. There wasn't really a straight draw. Well, on the turn, I guess there was a straight draw, but
kind of a straight draw for some weird hand, though.
Exactly, and when he had already shown so much, tried to show so much strength on the flop, then when the deuce hits the turn, I can't figure him that gave him a straight draw, right? So I pondered it for a long time. I hate that word ponder, but I thought about it for a while. And
how was he looking? Like, what did he look like when you were just thinking about it?
He had a pretty good poker face. I mean, he just sat there with his headphones, staring, with his angry face, like a lot of players try to do. And I just decided, there's nothing that he could have that I think beats me. I think he's on a flush draw. So I call. Call off all my chips, and I could, at that point, I guess he had his music up loud. He couldn't hear what I said, but I said I call, and he just sat there. So, and then I heard him say, "Did you say call?" And you could hear in his voice he sort of had the horse,
Are you kidding? You
called? No. Yeah, right, exactly. So I said I call. He turned over his hand. He had the king 7 of spades.
Okay.
So he flopped a pair and a flush draw.
Okay.
And but his at this point his king is dominated because I have king jack with top pair. He has king 7 with middle pair.
So he's looking for a spade or a 7.
Kings are dead, exactly. He needs a 7 or a spade, and he missed. So it was a pretty ballsy call. A couple of people came up to me after that hand and said, "Wow, I can't believe you called that for all your chips." But you know what? When you play with someone at a table for that long, and you're really paying attention to what they're doing and the motions that they're making and the raises that they make and hands that they raise with and don't raise with, all of that comes into play. And a lot of people don't pay enough attention and don't realize how important it is to pay attention. Because if I hadn't been paying attention, let's say that I had just moved to the table with this player, say, 10 minutes ago, or he had just gotten moved to my table, and the same thing happened, there's no way I can call that hand. I have to throw it away. In fact, when he raises on the flop, I might even get off the hand, because it's just, there's no sense in committing more chips to the pot and then missing when all you have is a top pair with a king kicker and the top pair is a jack. It's not that strong of a hand. So, fortunately, I had been observing this player, and it's just so important to do in poker. But again, I wouldn't have been able to make that call if I had just gotten moved to the table, or if he just had, because I wouldn't have had enough of a read on him. So I'd have to say, of recent memories that I can think of, that's probably the ballsiest call that I've made.
Based on a good hand analysis, though.
Right.
And you had, obviously, the right reasons to make the call, and you were right.
Fortunately, I was right, which isn't always the case, but that one in particular stands out in my mind.
Great. Thank you very much, Jon.
Sure.
This is Lizzie Harrison with Jon Friedberg for CardPlayer.com.